So welcome to Conversations with Esther. This evening, we're delighted to have you. You're hosted by Conversations with Esther. You can get us on our LinkedIn, Esther Katiba, and YouTube, Conversations with Esther. So I will just ask Leah to pray for us. Are you there?
Good evening, everyone.
Good
Let's
evening.
bow. Heavenly Father, King of Glory, to give you, dear Lord, as we are gathered here together to learn from each other. Heavenly Father, may we be instruments of ministry to one another. May this session be impactful to everyone who's in it and everyone who will share it forward. Heavenly Lord, it is in Jesus' name we do pray and believe. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you very much. So I want us to start this session. I know the previous Wednesdays on Fireside Chats with Esther Katiba, we've been hosting several conversations. We did the women and mental health. We've done men and mental health. We've done workplace toxicity in the workplace and so on. And today we are on youth and mental health. Now, for introduction, I want to go through some, I think on my post, there's something that I wrote. Did you know that suicide is the fourth leading cause of death among 15 to 29-year-olds? Depression, anxiety, and behavioral disorders are among the leading causes of illness and disability among adolescents. Globally, 1 in 7 10 to 19-year-olds experience a mental disorder, accounting to 13% of the global burden of disease in this age group. The consequences of failing to address adolescent mental health conditions extend to adulthood, impairing both physical and mental health and limiting opportunities to lead fulfilling lives as adults. That is scary by itself, and hence the conversation today on youth and mental health. Now, amongst us, we have two guests. We have Danish. Danish has been with us before, and thank you, Danish, for accepting to come back. We have Gathoni Mbugwa. She's also been with us and a partner with us. We have Jedida from Chiromo as well. Thank you, Jedida, for being there and supporting us all the time. So Danish is a mental health advocate, founder of the Wellness Club, journalist and writer. We have Gathoni, who is a senior clinical psychologist and head of digital relations at Chiromo Group. Now, the two will take us through this session. I want straight away to give it to Danish, so that Danish, I know you have had an experience, a personal experience, which you'll be willing to share with us. And thank you for joining all the way from the village, Asante Sana. Yeah. Danish will share his story, and he will also share his involvement in helping the youth. Over to you, Danish.
Thank you so much, Mama Pastor. For those who don't know, actually, Esther Katiba is the Mama Pastor at the church I mostly grew up and spent most of my time, the Kenya Assemblies of God. And yeah, sorry, you might see me killing mosquitoes. I'm in the village and I come from Kano Plains. Kano Plains is synonymous with rain, floods, and then mosquitoes. So you might see me doing a lot of that, but I'm outside, don't worry. So my name is Danish Odongo, like I've been introduced. And I'm a journalist. I spent considerable time working in the corporate world. Started my employment as a regional marketing officer for Stima Sacco. I was the Western Kenya regional marketing officer. And then I left, then went to Capital FM, where I became a journalist and a writer, mostly in charge of political affairs. So I covered the post-election. I covered the elections of 2017. I covered the elections of 2013. Of course, as a newsroom journalist. But the story that I want to share today begins on the 18th of December, on the 16th of December 2018. So I just really worked hard. I just quit employment a few months before, and I'd really worked hard. I wanted to take some time to come home and rest. And so prior to that, I'd had issues with sleep for I think about 3 months. I wasn't able to sleep well. I was having nightmares and just a lot of sleeping issues, And so something told me that why don't you go and see a psychiatrist who can, perhaps recommend something that could help you sleep. How did I know that I need to see a psychiatrist? When I was in high school, I had a really persistent headache all through high school. And my dad took me to see a psychiatrist when I was in high school then. Of course, I went to Madari. They did an EEG test. Of course, there was a small misdiagnosis there where they misdiagnosed me with mild seizures. I didn't have any epilepsy or any epileptic seizure, but still that's what they found when I was in high school. And so they put me on some epileptic medicine by the way, for quite a while, until when I went to the university and I went to see another psychiatrist who told me that, oh, by the way, you don't have any epileptic seizure, none. You have no problem with epilepsy. And I asked them why. Then he told me that the machine they used is prone to a misdiagnosis based on very small things. So it's not very, very accurate, So anyway, so on the 16th of December, I decided to go to Upper Hill Medical Center. On the third floor, I find a gentleman sitting on his seat, rotating, wearing a nice clean shirt. You could tell he was a professional. Of course, I would later learn that he was Dr. Frank Njenga. I wasn't even like aware about him before that. I'd read a few of his articles, but I wasn't like really keen because I had absolutely no idea around mental health. I just knew mental health, there was depression only, and depression was a preserve of kids who are raised in wealthy families and raised in Nairobi, and they are soft. That's why they had depression. But me, I was raised in the village. I grew up doing very tough manual jobs. So there was no way I was going to ever suffer from depression. However, then Dr. Njenga recommended a couple of tests after we talked extensively, and he recommended some tests, and then he sent me a whole list of reading. And when I was going home in a matatu, I was living in Ruaka then. I was just nodding my head, reading through this article that Dr. Njenga had sent. I was saying, yes, that's me. You struggle with focus, that's me. Struggle putting, you have emotional regulation issues, whether you're extremely emotional or sometimes you're insensitive. I mean, you're not emotional. That's me. Sometimes you struggle with sleep. That's me. Your thoughts run sometimes wild and they're exciting and you're creative, and at night you can't sleep. That's me. And so that's how I eventually was diagnosed with ADHD. ADHD being attention deficiency hyperactivity disorder. And that was the first time that the problem that had been with me in my life was correctly diagnosed. Because I remember when I was a kid, I'd always been a different kid. Not different like everyone says, oh, I'm a different child, but different in terms of I was just a bit emotional. So people's pain really hurt me a lot. I was a bit more sensitive to comments and to words. In class, I would wonder why this lesson was going on for 40 minutes when it could have been like 10, 15 minutes, even writing, my handwritings were just like, chicken that had walked on a muddy place. And so all along, I knew I was different, but I did not know why I was different or how I was different. So now let me take you back slightly a few years before the official diagnosis. So before the official diagnosis, even though ADHD had served me well because it made me good in school, so I performed relatively well in the schools that I went to. The teachers loved me. I was good with people. I had a bit of charisma. I don't want to say a lot, but yes, everywhere I went, people noticed me as a leader. So ADHD had really served me well. I saw it more as a gift then. But then eventually when I got into employment and I went to Capital FM, and Capital FM was a very exciting place, but also I felt like I was a small fish in a big pond, My previous job, my targets were not as crazy as the targets at Capital FM. Capital FM was required to sell 2 million shillings per month. At Stima Sacco, I was just pretty doing basic accounts, and Stima Sacco having members from Kenya Power, Kengen, and what we call the energy sector, it was not hard for them to buy into the products of Stima Sacco, So it was very easy for me to succeed at at Team Masako, but it was very hard for me to succeed at Capital. And then now that's when the negative sides of ADHD started coming. So I started now beating myself down, feeling demotivated, impatient, and stuff like that. And then, of course, I also fell in love during that season. And this relationship was difficult. Both of us contributed. I don't wanna say one person contributed more than the other, but both of us contributed. And so it was another additional layer of baggage that I was carrying. And then I got into financial mess, even though I'd worked for Stima Sacco, where my work really was traveling around Kenya, doing a lot of financial education, because that was one of our role of our marketers. But I realized that I'd taken some facility to facilitate my master's degree. And this master's degree that I did, I felt like it did not increase in the change in my salary, So I was seeing these deductions in my pay slip, and I was wondering, why the hell would I be deducted this money yet I did not really, and I really grew to resent that loan, that facility. So all these things, and then that time I moved away from Buruburu, where I was, and close to church, close to community, close to my friends, and I went and I lived in Ruaka. And so it was very lonely. Then Ruaka was not this big town people see today. It was a very quiet, cold town that people would go and would sleep by 6, 7 p.m. There are no shops. So I'd get into my room and I'd stay there till very late, So it was generally a mixture of many things that eventually led to me having this sleepless night the last 3 months before I was diagnosed. And of course, when I was diagnosed, Dr. Njenga recommended that I get admitted for them to look at if there was any other comorbidity with issues with sleep. And then, of course, I ended up at Chiromolen Medical Center. And I was really, really grateful that I went there. I met a very fantastic counselor called Peter Mbuga, who's become like a really good friend till today. And Peter just took me through, really, really very good counseling. And I remember the first day, the second day, I remember how I was feeling lighter, and I was feeling really emotional, and I was feeling like, wow, what if I wasn't diagnosed now? Then I wasn't even 30. What if I wasn't diagnosed now? How this have affected my life in future? But then I was also thinking, what if this thing was diagnosed the first time I went to Mathare? What if it was diagnosed? Maybe my life would have been dramatically different. And so that's now when I left the hospital, then I became a mental health advocate. Before that, I did not know anything about mental health. I'd never spent a time writing anything about mental health. I was a political commentator. We used to have a show called News Sources on KTN News. I was a regular on different local shows, talking about many, many things, politics and social trends and all this sort of stuff. And I was a writer at Capital FM. And so I did not know anything about mental health. In fact, I can say that prior to that, my life really was on the right trajectory, because I wrote extensively for Jubilee Party when they were in power with Uhuru and Ruto. I worked for Kidero, was of course a side gig writing for him. I wrote for almost all these big people you see in this country, whether it's C.S. Moses Kuria, whether it was AG, then Gideon Muigai, and I was contracted to write as a ghost writer for these people. And so I traveled even outside the country through writing. I remember there's this time that Ford, the South African company that makes vehicles, took us as a couple of journalists to George, South Africa, where we went and launched a brand new vehicle in that part of the world. And so my life was going on well, and I did not know anything about mental health or any of these challenges. Why this is important is because sometimes people who struggle do not know that the struggles can affect their lives. You don't know that your struggle can affect, that your mental health challenges can affect your career, they can affect your relationship, they can affect many other aspects of your life. So I'd like to be honest here that from 2018, when I felt like my life fell apart. It's like I started rebuilding my life. And I'm grateful to God that He's enabled me to rebuild. I wrote a book called Unbreakable, A Story of Resilience and Finding Beauty in Depression, right here. I've been involved in many policy work with the government of the Republic of Kenya. I've sat down with many people, like post mental health work. I've sat down with different projects to talk about mental health. My point here is that it is possible to recover, that despite the many challenges you face, despite the diagnosis could be bipolar, it could be schizophrenia, it could be depression, it could be ADHD like mine. It is possible to live a life that is productive and a life that is progressive. after being diagnosed, of course, I got into medication. I was taking ADHD medication, and I was taking depression, and I was taking a mood stabilizer medication. I was on 3 different types of medication. Of course, I was discontinued from those medication. And so now what I rely on heavily a lot is just therapy. That's what I do on a regular basis. I do psychotherapy, and of course I work out, I journal a lot, I travel, I do a lot of these things just to keep my mind okay. So if you have a son, a daughter who is struggling, I now tell people that do not look at mental health just from a medical perspective only. It is very important that we look at it from a mental health perspective. I mean, from a medical perspective. But the biggest chunk of what I tell people now is that look at it as a personal development tool. That if you go through psychotherapy, if you go into medication, see medication just like somebody who is short-sighted and needs spectacles. See medication as somebody who perhaps has a blood sugar issue and need medication to stabilize their blood sugar. Do not see medication and say, oh, this medication will make me, I might be mad, blah, 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 stuff like that. See medication as an aid, something that can enable you, because if you have mental health issues, then it means that you are slightly different. Your brain functions slightly different from other people, and therefore you might need a bit more support than them, and of course, I'd also like to say that it is important also to go beyond just medication. Also, it's important to work out. It brings endorphins. It makes your body to be better. So now what I'm doing now is what I call holistic wellness. So I pursue holistic wellness. So I have a personal trainer who trains me, so that then when my body is fit and I'm working out, then I feel better. I sleep. And I'm from working out right now, and I know I'll sleep much better than if I did not sleep. Of course, I also do a lot of hygiene. I do a lot of sleep hygiene. So I journal. I try to shut my phone 1 hour before. I try not to do anything that is exciting before bed. But also because I know money is a major trigger for me as somebody who lives with ADHD, I've had to really work hard. One, to live within my means, because I realized that before that I was living beyond my means. And secondly, I've had to look for financial wellness tips. So now I have people who advise me on investments, stuff like that. And therefore, it enables me to work with my money within the means I have. And I'm able to multiply what the little I have, and I'm able to be in control of my money. Relationship has been a very big issue in my life. And of course, I realized that the only way for me to have a control over that is to continuously do therapy and psychotherapy, just so that I'm able to see things from a different perspective. And therefore, my life now, I'd say that even though it was derailed slightly by the mental health breakdown I had, but there's just been immense blessings that have come as a result of this. Without the mental health breakdown I had, I don't think I'd have been an author. Right now, I'm an author, and I think that's an exciting achievement to have. Without the mental health breakdown, I don't think I'd have met all these people I've met in this space, including Gadoni and amazing people who are doing amazing work. If it wasn't for mental health work that I'm doing, I don't think I'd been appointed to a technical working group by the government of Kenya, as a suicide prevention strategy working group. I don't think Aga Khan have called me to sit on their registry, and many of these things that we've done, including articles and the people we've sat down with and the lives that we've changed. I don't think that would have happened without that. And therefore, without further ado, I'd just like to say that if you are in a space like where I was, where you're struggling with your mind, and you're struggling with your emotions, and you're struggling with your mental health, one, there is recovery. Two, if you seek professional help, Chiromo, you seek a counselor, people who can support you in your work, it is possible to recover. And last but not least, if your child is going through this thing, it's not demonic, it's not anything that cannot be known. It is a disease that can be diagnosed, that has a name, that can be cured, that somebody can live and and if you're a parent here and your son or your daughter is struggling with mental health challenges, there's addiction, depression, anxiety, any of that, it is possible that your child can live a meaningful life and change their life. Adios, and that is my story. I'll be open for any question in the comment section. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Danish. I'm really tempted to ask you where you are at with your relationship. And a relationship not with family. This is a youth forum.
Yeah.
Whether you've really been able to get into a relationship, what has happened, and how you're taking that.
It's been very difficult. That's the truth. It's been very, very difficult. This very same day, that was the prayer item I took to God in prayer. Because why it's difficult for me is because I'm very emotional, and there's no problem with a man being emotional. Because of ADHD, there's something called emotional regulation. That's what also makes me a writer, a passionate person. All that's come. But also the downside of it is also I'm very particular and very intense and stuff like that. And I'm also very picky and very choosy and very particular. So that is a story that is firmly at the feet of Jesus. I'm waiting for him to answer, because when he made me like this, he knew that there's somebody out there who will fit in a life like mine, and therefore that I've given unto him, and it's not bothering me anymore.
Wow, that's beautiful. I want to recognize Jackie, and I know Jackie is in the house. Jackie was in our last session last time for the women and mental health. Jackie has actually attempted suicide twice. I think I need to let you know this, Danish. You need to link up, and she shared her story last week. Thank you, Jackie, for joining. I see you there, and you informed me you're at work. So I want to go straight to Gadhoni. Gadhoni, you've listened to Danish, and he's a representation of a lot of youth. The relationship issues, the work stress issues, the money issues, living beyond their means. What do you have to say as an expert? I think I'll give this up to you.
Thank you, Esther, for that. Before I get into my presentation, just allow me to appreciate Danish. He's been doing such an amazing job. And I want to recognize the fact that we cannot talk about mental health without involving individuals with lived experience, no matter how qualified we are. And it absolutely takes a lot of courage to come out and be bold. I love some of the things he said are very emotional, and those are things that really stigmatize a lot of people, more so for men, but also for women as well. I love that he's talked about, maybe one day I'll get somebody who fits me as I am. I don't know, because this is a youth conversation. I don't know if any of you guys have watched is it Bridgerton or Charlotte? The king is dealing with a mental illness. And what I love about that current series that is ongoing on Netflix is the compassion that the wife shows the king, bearing in mind that he is dealing with a mental illness. And it brings out such a powerful story because of the fact that he is supported with love and compassion by somebody who loves, and we can see him being able to be bold, to come out of his shell, to face people and go through that extra mile. And last but not least, we need to recognize that mental illness it's not disabling. You can still be the best version of yourself, even with a diagnosis. This is a diagnosis like any other diagnosis, like having hypertension or diabetes, or any other diagnosis. If we get to a point of normalizing it from that angle, then you realize, oh, okay, I'm not any different than any other person. Plus, we are close, we are only a trigger away. In fact, there are a lot of people who still continue living with a mental illness, but they are not aware. Especially with ADHD. As a practitioner, I call it the intellectual diagnosis, because you really actually can be able to do a lot and excel before it gets to that peak where it completely overwhelms you. You can be able to do a lot with it. Same as to some individuals who have functioning anxiety or depression. They are able to cope, and they are able to thrive. But technically, the best way to deal with it is to get a diagnosis, and early diagnosis, early intervention also ensures that this person is able to recover better. So let me just allow me just to teach you a little bit, because I did have this conversation with Esther earlier on. I want to teach you a little bit about some key things. And as I get into that, For those of you who are joining this conversation and don't know about Chiromo Hospital Group, where Danish has mentioned, this is it. We actually currently now have 6 facilities. We just opened an outpatient center at where Danish talked about in Upper Hill Medical Center. We have a full wellness center there that is for outpatient. And then we have the 2 hospitals in Lavington, and we have the 2 hospitals in Westlands and Nyali. Nyali branch is the one down at the corner. Let's look at a few key statistics. I'm sure you have heard this, but let's look at 1 in 4 people. This statistic, first of all, shockingly, it's such an old WHO statistic. This was even before the pandemic. This was even before our former president declared mental illness as a disaster, as something that really needs to be prioritized in this country. So we can't continue sweeping this conversation under the rug. We also note and know that suicide being the second leading cause of death amongst the youth, 19 to 24 years. Okay, we see it also causing more deaths than from war or homicide at 57%, and this mostly occurring in low or middle income countries. Contrary to what Dennis thought, that this is a disease of people who are experiencing the soft life. Yeah. In fact, when we say 1 in 4, sometimes I hear people saying, "Oh, do doctors get mental illness? Or do religious leaders get mental illness?" And I keep telling them it's 1 in 4. It doesn't say 1 in 4 doctors or 1 in 4 low income or 1 in 4 CEOs or 1 in 4 girls. Holistically. So literally, as long as you're seated in a group of people and you're 4 of you, 1 out of 4 is going to suffer from a mental illness. We also see a gender difference where suicide is concerned. And let me just ask you that question as we continue having this conversation. Answer it on the chat box. Which between men and women, between men and women, who attempt suicide more and who die by suicide more? Let me bring to your attention that the findings of the 10th report by the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network, it suggested that Kenya is the 28th and happiest nation in the world. So we have so many people who are dealing with a lot, who are carrying a lot. And I saw a tweet the other day that it really made me, think a lot more into this. I didn't realize it, but the tweet said that every time you look at people, they are dressed well, they look well, calm and collected, with a smile on their face until you have a conversation with them. And when you have a conversation with them, you realize that people are carrying a lot. So we have a lot more people who are stressed than they would want to recognize or than they would want to talk about publicly, but it doesn't mean that people are still not suffering in silence, mainly because of the stigma. And as we continue having these conversations, continue hearing lived experiences, then we will get to a space where we can normalize this conversation. The same way I can say, "Hey, by the way, there's a hormone going around and I think I'm not feeling well." Can we get to that place where we can also say, "Oh, by the way, I've not slept 2-3 days," and my neighbor will pick it up and say, "Oh, you need to check into that. That's actually a red flag that you have not been sleeping. It means your brain is not resting. And if your brain is not resting, then it's not able to send and receive messages as it should." So tasks involved where the youth are concerned. 1 is a self. How do you see yourself as an individual? I call that the self-perception that you have of yourself. And usually there's a difference between your ideal self and the real self. The bigger the difference between your ideal self and your real self, then the more incongruent you're going to feel about yourself currently. So the goal, there is no perfection. So you not get a perfect space where your ideal self and your real self, are perfectly like this. But the goal is to bring them a bit closer. And for you to do that, you need a lot of self-awareness. Okay, where the family is concerned, how do you relate to the family members, the functions and the roles that you have, if you have them? How do you socialize with your friends and your peers? Have you gotten to a point where you're able to build a social capital for yourself? And I like to say that that has to be away from your workstation, and it has to be away from your family. I mean, those relationships are very, very important, but you need to form your own circle. And I like to confidently say, if you get fired from a job, your friend who was your best friend, your colleague at that workstation, they're not going to hire you back. Yeah. So do you have a social capital whereby people are able to be there for you, to show up for you, to support you, to visit you, to shop for you, to give you ideas, to still stimulate you? And then the community, this is how one functions. Yeah. In school, if you're in school, or at work and within the community. These are the main challenges. Danish has talked about finances at the top of the list. Finances are really such a trigger where poor mental health is concerned. And when poor mental health is not addressed, that is what accelerates to triggering a mental illness, followed by relationships. Those are the two topmost triggers. A lot of character development has been going around, yeah, maybe since before we were there, but it's just a serious reality. If you look at most of the stories that are being panned out through the media, if there was a homicide, if there was a suicide, then if you dig a little deeper, then you'll find that it was financial or it was a relationship issue. So also choosing partners, or even not choosing and waiting, would be such a good thing for the youth. But as listed here, these are some of the challenges that the youth face. Looking at why this is important, we have at least 1 in 5 youth aged between 9 and 17 years currently having a diagnosable mental health disorder that causes some degree of impairment. But in the African culture, in the Kenyan culture, we never get to these stages of conversation because, one, mental health is not even implemented in schools. And then secondly, as long as your child is going to school, as long as you're working and you have a job, then, we don't see like there is any other problem. If something happens within the family setup, we don't talk about it. We shove it down. So we have a lot of undiagnosable mental health issues going on. 1 in 10 has a disorder that may cause significant impairment, and only a third of these people, youth, receive the necessary treatment. Obviously, we can't fail to recognize that the cost of treatment is also quite costly, quite expensive. Okay. So usually the onset of mental illnesses is at 14 years. Allow me to briefly explain that to you. So the biggest contributor is usually adverse childhood experiences. There are 10 of them. They're divided into 3 categories. There is neglect, there is family dysfunctionality, and then there is abuse. Okay, abuse is physical, sexual, emotional. Neglect is emotional, physical. Family dysfunctionality, we have a parent struggling with addiction, a parent jailed, mental illness. We have divorce or separation. We have domestic violence within that family, any form of dysfunctionality. Now, children have a very high defense mechanism. Very high. Defense mechanisms are actually there to protect us. Yeah, once the brain recognizes this issue is too much, it's going to take this child down. So the defense mechanisms are employed. So a child might seem to thrive because they are going to school and they look okay, even if they were sexually abused, until they get to their teenage years. When you get to your teenage years, the defense mechanisms go down to pave way for the body to develop physiologically, the voice breaking, or the breast growing. So at that point, that's when we begin to see behavioral changes. But in layman's, we say, we only changed akiwa form 2. This person, they changed when they went to high school. But we fail to recognize that it's not what is wrong with this person. It is what happened to this person. We fail to recognize that this is a child who went through domestic violence. This is a child whose parents were not together. This is a child who went through trauma, whether it was physical, emotional, or sexual. So that's when we begin to see this at the age of 14 years. But even then, treatment. Treatment is not done. And when I'm talking about treatment, I love what Danish said, that it's not just medical. I'm talking about the wellness part of it, which means that you can be able to process without necessarily the use of medication at that point. Only in very severe cases do you need medication. So usually no treatment will begin until some even 20 years later. And we have anxiety and mood disorders are 2 to 3 times more prevalent in females adolescents than in male adolescents, although the reverse is true for ADHD. Yeah, so for ADHD, we find that we have more men. For mood disorders, we find that we do have more women. So generally, mental health problems amongst the youth will lead to this. You begin to have issues in your school. You'll find that somebody is dropping out, somebody is stagnating, they're failing exams, even though they were really sharp. Work pressure, because ideally normalcy is the ability to deal with the stressor, cope with it, learn how to cope with it and process it and move on. Yeah, but whenever you find that the work pressure is too much and you're not able to deal with it, maybe there's also something else that is underlying. Behavioral difficulties, increased issues within the school, like truancy. When you look at emotional signs, you begin to see this person nowadays, they've changed. They are withdrawn, they are quiet, they don't come out anymore. They don't want to hang out if they used to hang out. They are dealing with ruminating thoughts, low self-esteem. Yeah, that feeling of worthlessness, the irritability, every single thing. And also Danish talked about what he was experiencing himself. So you begin to get very, very irritable at every small little trigger. And if you want to see this, just drive on the streets of Nairobi. You'll realize how many people are so irritable. Yeah. Like all your life, you've known that motorbikes are a nuisance, matatus are a nuisance, but you'll still find somebody hooting, peering out of the window, almost you want to insult or abuse that guy. So the level of irritability also increases both at home, but also in your other environments like work or schools. Your moods are unstable, up and down. Today you're okay, tomorrow you're not. Excessive worry and drastic changes in your personality, in your behavior. But let me say that this is not just a one-time thing. We are talking about a prolonged period of time. We are talking about actually a period of more than 2 weeks consecutively. So if you just had a bad day today, don't be quick to diagnose yourself. For those in school, you'll begin to have this easily distracted. You remember Danish saying that he's in class and he's wondering, oh my God, why is this lesson taking 1 hour? They could have just said this in 30 minutes. But also that means that his brain is able to pick up, problem solve quite fast and move on, which is sometimes also different for other people, but it's also with the ability to focus and concentrate. So you get just easily exhausted and tired where concentration is concerned. Community, social signs, same. You can see there is a lot of changes where you see, and this actually shows us what happens in children, but also what happens in young adults. Okay, I want us to go into these are the common mental illnesses affecting the youth. I'm not going to talk about ADHD because Dedish has talked about ADHD, but depression, anxiety, self-harm, which is a symptom, but also I wanted to put it alone there just to discuss it separately, but all an addiction. So depression and anxiety are the most abused words today. Yeah, when somebody has gone through something, the first thing they would say, oh my God, I'm so depressed. Or I think niko na anxiety. And I want us to get away from a space where we need to stop labeling ourselves. A mental illness diagnosis is not something that is just meted passed very easily. There's a whole criteria that you have to go through for you to actually get a diagnosis, because this is a condition. So you're going to live with it for the better part of your life. So there's a whole criteria for depression, for anxiety, and even amongst depression and anxiety, that also there are so many other disorders that are under depression. Okay, for example, we have we have postpartum depression, bipolar mood disorder, which they are under depressive disorders. For anxiety, we have social anxiety, we have generalized anxiety, we have phobias. There are like so many of them. So let's not jump into a space where we quickly want to label ourselves. Self-harm. Self-harm is here because a lot of us, a lot of people, I've seen both my clients and the people I interact with engaging in risky suicidal behaviors. This is not just taking pills or cutting yourself, the classic self-harm that we know, but this also include individuals who engage. For example, you've seen people in bikes, high speed, no gear at all. That's a risky suicidal behavior unconsciously. Binge drinking to a point that you could literally get alcohol poisoning. And even with that binge drinking, you're on one corner and you're going to Kikuyu, on the other side, but you have drunk so much and engaging in driving under the influence heavily. So those are also other subtle ways that we are not really aware that this is really a form of self-harm, a serious form of life self-sabotage that you're engaging in. And then, of course, we have addiction. Ideally, we get into substances as a way of trying to cope, ideally, or even from a space of curiosity. You want to see, what is this thing that I was told is for adults? Okay, now I'm an adult. Let me try and taste this. Let me try and, do this and that. But then, before you realize it, it's your coping tool. Before you realize it, your brain is demanding that you have it for you to experience that normalcy. But also social media addiction. And I want to challenge all of us, the ones who are here today, to take time and do a social media detox. Just stay off your phone for a while. Stay off social media. Test yourself. Can you actually stay away from your phone for a while? Test yourself. Can you wake up in the middle of the night and not want to scroll on your phone? Do that for yourself. Interventions at the top of the list usually is self-care. When you hear about holistic wellness, self-care is key where prevention and promotion of mental health is concerned. The myths around self-care is that self-care is selfish. No, you're the most important piece of your life's puzzle. So if you don't take care of yourself, who is going to take care of you? You have to take care of yourself. But that cannot happen until you recognize your worth. So that the same energy you give other people, the same energy that you have in taking care of other people, you can do that for yourself. The other myth around self-care is that self-care is only for people with poor mental health or mental illnesses. Yeah, that's a myth. We all need to holistically take care of ourselves, not only when we are sick, but also when we are feeling our best, we can continue with those self-care routines. The other myth around self-care is that self-care is an all or nothing. No, you would rather do exercise only than not do it at all. So you'd rather do one thing than not do something. However, the person who is engaging in 3 or 4 types of self-care is better off than the one who has one. But the one who has one is also better off than the one who has 0. You are not engaging in self-care until you get to a point where you recognize that you're made up of different facets, you as a human being holistically. And because of that, you need to take an inventory. What did I do for physical? Are you exercising? What are you putting in your body? The brain is the gut. Sorry, the gut is the second brain. Are you sleeping well? Are you practicing that sleep hygiene? Mental exercise. Are you able to engage in a positive self-talk? Are you able to go for therapy? Are you able to recognize the negative thoughts that you have and counter those negative thoughts with positive thoughts? Are you able to be grounded, present in the moment? Emotional self-care. Environment. How is your environment? I like to say, for those of you who are here and you have young children and teenagers, if you want to know that there's something going on with that child, enter their bedroom. If you find it so disorganized, they've never opened the curtains, there are so many dirty things, inside there, it's haphazard up and down, something is not right. And I know part of that is usually like normal teenage behavior, but you can be able to tell, like, no, this is too much. Hey. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, you can be able to tell that this is too much. I've talked about social and social capital and what you can do. Financial self-care is very, very important. I did skip spiritual, but today the treatment model of psychology has included spirituality as part of treatment. And I want to say, I do recognize that as a country, we are in, a shaky space where matters religion and spirituality are concerned, but spirituality and religion are not the same. So I'm not talking about religion here. I am talking about a belief in a higher power, a belief system in a God, whoever your God might be, because spirituality is actually what grounds you. Hope is harnessed in spirituality. Feed yourself. The big question about purpose: who am I? What am I doing? When you ask what's your purpose, are you serving your purpose in life? Those questions are answered in spirituality. So for individual intervention, you have to be very intentional about holistic wellness. Do it for yourself, not because somebody told you, but because you're worth it. And protecting both your hardware and your software is very, very important. Okay, I want us to look at why this conversation today is also very important. Yeah, we see that 75.1% of Kenyans are actually below 35 years, according to the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, 2019. Imagine, they are below 35 years. As a hospital, our biggest demographic age of admission is 18 to 35 years. So a lot of youth are really being affected by mental health issues. So basically, Kenya is a very, very youthful nation. When the task force was formed, they also included the youth as part of it. And what has worked? I talked about the most common mental illnesses amongst the youth, and I also spoke about being able to be aware of yourself. So one thing that we can do, one thing that we've done as Chiromo Hospital Group, we've digitized. We didn't make our own tools. We digitized the globally accredited tools. They are embedded in our website. All those tools are accessible to people for free. They are confidential and they have instant results. So if you're here and you're wondering, okay, could I be depressed? I have been sleeping too much. I have been very sad. I've been crying. I've been withdrawn. Or maybe I'm going through such a bad breakup and it's really taking a toll on me, or I've been grieving and you're wondering, could I be depressed? Then you can take the patient health questionnaire. It's a brief screener. It's not a diagnostic tool. So don't diagnose yourself. And the point of doing that is just to know, where am I at? Is it mild? Is it moderate? Is it severe? That is confidential. Don't even write your name on it. There is a provision at the bottom that says, if you would like a psychologist to reach out to you, leave your number. Then in that case, you can leave your number and somebody will reach out to you. We also do have tele-counseling and tele-psychiatry. That has also been incorporated. You can have sessions from the comfort of your home. You can access, we have a toll-free number today, 0800 220 000. Now we actually have a whole wellness department. And this toll-free number works 24/7. You can be able to reach, if you're in a crisis, if you know somebody in the crisis, you can be able to reach out for help. And this is free. You might not get a full session, but you will absolutely get what we call psychological first aid. I know Danish is one of the people who are also working with the government, with the state, in terms of looking into suicide and decriminalizing it. Unfortunately, we are still in a space where suicide is a criminal offense, according to our constitution. And we have people who are serving a sentence. The sentence is actually usually 2 years or a fine or both. Yeah, the same constitution says that every Kenyan has a right to attain the highest level of health. So how are we going to help people attain the highest level of health if we are going to punish them for still having health problems? Because suicide is actually a symptom of a major underlying crisis. Sometimes even a diagnosed or even sometimes an undiagnosed mental illness. We need to allocate a budget. In fact, as we speak, currently where we are, I don't think we've allocated any budget. We didn't even recognize the Department of Mental Health. Yeah. When they, with the current leadership that we have. I hope that we can get into a space where every public facility level 4 has a psychologist, because whereas it might cost 4,000, 5,000 to have a therapy session, I know that you can pay 50 bob to go see a psychologist. Yeah, maybe at Kiambu Hospital that is next to me, or even at Thika, or even at KNH. If we actually have these professionals, then we increase access to treatment for a lot more people, for our youth. These are the most productive people. These are the leaders, the parents of tomorrow. And I hope that we can also get to a place where mental health literacy is incorporated in the curriculum. Do you know what I discovered? That the literacy level in Africa, not even in Kenya, in Africa, is only 30%. The literacy level is 30%. So all these things we've been doing, awareness, conversations online, it's just to a 30%. So we also need to get to an extra mile where we can have these conversations in our local dialect. We can translate tools into Swahili so that somebody can be able to still take that patient health questionnaire and figure out, where am I at? Yeah. So these are some of the proposals and recommendations that we are looking at, having these conversations within the school curriculum itself. Community-based intervention. Yeah, the family is a basic unit of the community. If we can be able to teach parents psychological first aid, if we can be able to teach parents that it's okay to seek help to deal with their own traumas, yeah, so that they don't pass them, because we say when trauma is not transformed, it is transferred. And I hear a lot of people saying, but us, we went through a lot and we are okay. Who said you're okay? If you are unconsciously projecting to somebody else, to your child, to your colleague, so we are not necessarily okay. Religious institutions having these psychological first aid trainings also to our religious leaders, and I'm really happy that Esther is very keen on awareness, being in the position that she is in, because we need to have these conversations. And these institutions are actually the biggest hosts of the community. The biggest hosts are the religious institutions. So support groups, normalizing this conversation within the community is very, very important. So allow me to stop there and just take any questions. If you have any question in the full realm of mental health, whether it's clinical, whether it's wellness, I'm ready to, address that. These are our numbers. This is a toll-free line. If you didn't see it, these are our social media platforms. Yeah, let me see. Did I try with the time? I think I tried this time. So let me open this to a question and answer session.
Well, thank you, Gathoni. That is detailed, very detailed, and I'm seeing a lot of conversations going on here. Thank you, Danish, and I see you've been answering them here and there. So I'm trying to look at this. It's good to hear a real life story of someone who has survived mental health because he sought assistance in good time. Thank you. Say hi to Gathoni. That's Jackie Gathoni. I think men attempt a lot of suicide. When someone says men attempt suicide, I guess because of the real men don't cry line. Danish answered that and said, nope, women attempt suicide more, but men die 3 times more than women, mostly because they use very violent methods. Also, men die by suicide at odd hours. Wow. Wow, that's serious. Then Rose says, I have several youth who find it difficult to accept that they need help when facing such cases. How does one convince, or how did Danish decide to seek help? Sorry, I got him finishing. So I think, Danish, you answered that. I don't know. Yeah. So the other one was, I like that Gathoni has, that's Danish, has focused on the holistic wellness. Acceptance to me is one of the hardest steps to make. I think, Gathoni, just talk about acceptance as we go on, and trauma. I'm seeing a lot of that on the side chats. Yeah, just talk to that.
Maybe before I talk about from a clinical perspective. I mean, Danish, how did you get to a point of, saying, okay, I'm done, I need help?
Gadoni, mine was pretty interesting. Like I mentioned in the comment section, I'd reached my end. I wasn't able to sleep. I was having nightmares. It was affecting my productivity. So I think I'm the worst case example to use, because that's the story of many people with mental health issues. We often wait till it's very last minute when it's become an illness, then that's when we seek help. However, what I've told her is that I'm also grateful that my diagnosis came in my late 20s. I'd already worked. I was a bit self-aware. I'd established my faith with God. Like, there are many aspects of my life that have been established. But for her, the lady who's asking here, she's just a teenager who, I mean, actually, she's just in adolescence. So I'm imagining all these identities she's dealing with and all these sorts of, perhaps you could talk to her about that. But also, acceptance was a very easy way for me to seek help, because I did not fight the diagnosis. I did not begin to fight. I was just, you know what, by the way, I'm the one who knows where the shoe has been pinching me. And if the doctor says it's this, then we're going to go with it. And so I shut the outside world and I focused on what the professionals were saying until I was able to stand on my feet. That's when now I started reading and doing things by myself. Yeah.
Thank you for giving us that insight. And unfortunately, that is the typical case scenario today. A lot of times I usually, even amongst friends or family, when we are having a conversation, I'll tell somebody, oh, maybe you need to go for therapy. And instinctually, somebody will be like, no, I don't think I'm that badly off. And I keep telling people, what are you waiting for? Are you waiting for you to start talking to yourself? Are you waiting until you can't sleep and you're having nightmares? So acceptance is such a big thing. It starts with having the knowledge, empowering yourself. It also goes into you going against the stereotypes of what accessing therapy or accessing treatment from a facility is. Like Danish has said, you're the only one who knows where the shoe pinches. And unfortunately, with poor mental health, the more time it takes, then the worse it becomes. And sometimes you can cross a line and never be able to actually come back from it. So engaging in prevention is key. The truth is, factually, when somebody has not gotten to a point of accepting, there's nothing you can do about it, because even if you force them to come into therapy, it becomes counterproductive. Okay, now they have added resentment because you forced them into a facility, so they actually become even worse. But even for those people who can willingly walk into a therapy session, I always tell all my patients, because today I'm seeing a lot of people from a wellness perspective rather than clinical symptoms. I keep telling them that you need to understand that even though you're coming for this session, you will do 70% of the work. I will only do 30% of the work. So this has to be progressive. This has to be continuous. It's not going to be a one-stop show. So for those of you who feel frustrated because you know a friend, because you know a relative who is not into that space, keep talking to them. I like to say people can't unhear. Yeah, keep talking to them over and over. You've said what you need to say in an empathetic way, in a kind way, because nobody, even us, nobody wants to be labeled. Nobody wants to be the only dysfunctional person in a circle. So it's looking for a way to get into them. Sometimes it even calls for saying, then I'll go with you for that session. I'll pay for you. I'll drive you there. I'll take a matatu and I'll sit outside that therapy session with you. I'll sit outside there and I'll wait for you to come out and I'll be there. It takes that. So continue creating space for them. But if I can also be very honest, even though I'm a practitioner and I'm more of an evidence-based person, the truth is spirituality plays a big role, because there are still some point in our life where we say, you know what, then maybe I need to engage prayer for this son of mine, for this daughter of mine, for this relative. Just the recognition of, okay, I've tried my best, I need to engage a higher power. I'll continue talking to them, but I hope that they can get into that turnaround. So it's not easy. And there is also the burden of caregiving. You know, when somebody is in denial, they are the last person to see that they have a problem. Everybody around you can see the problem except you. So it can be very emotionally exhausting. But don't give up. Don't stop. And even if they decide to change 10 years later, still be there. Still be there for them. Don't abandon them.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Gathoni, for that. And thank you for the information. I'm seeing a very interesting comment as we close. I know we are 11 minutes past time. Someone says, wait, I would like to be sure. How bad is talking to yourself, especially if it's something you've done since you were 9? You were young, 9 years. We all talk to ourselves. I think, I don't know what's happening.
We do.
Yeah.
I mean, the truth
Come
is
on.
we talk to ourselves, we think out aloud. You know, you can be stressed and you're just, talking to yourself.
Mhm.
But usually the difference comes in duration. Yeah. So if you're engaging in a full-blown conversation, then it's beyond talking to yourself. You're even answering questions. It's like you're conversating with somebody who cannot be seen. That is another different story, because we call that auditory hallucination. So it's like you're hearing a voice and you're answering to it. That's very different than just making a comment and thinking out aloud.
Good. I think at least that is safe for some of us who talk to ourselves, who think out loud. I think that's the way I should call it. And thank you everyone for this. We are way above time. I will just ask Danish, your parting shot. I know we have so much we can say. Your parting shot, Danish.
Sorry, my parting shot is simple. First of all, the person who is talking to yourself, make sure you are telling yourself the right things, because maybe oftentimes we are overly critical of ourselves and we beat ourselves down and we don't extend grace to us the way we extend to other people. And finally, don't seek help because people are saying you're mad, blah, blah, blah. Seek help because you are the one who knows the demons you are battling at night, the challenges you're facing, how this thing is paralyzing your life. I like the story of the man who was healed by Jesus. And when he went to the Sanhedrin, they were asking him, so is he the one who healed? He said, whether he is a sinful man or not, I don't know. But all I know is that I was blind, but now I see. So for you, make sure that your most important thing is that you are blind, but you see. That now your life becomes progressive and your life becomes a bit more productive. All for all glory to God. Asanteni sana, and may God bless you all.
Wow, thank you. Thank you. Gathoni, parting shot.
Don't wait for worst case scenario for you to seek help. The time to seek help is now. Engage on a prevention and promotion where mental health is concerned, and practice wellness, practice a self-care very seriously. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Tufunguke.
Tufunguke. Asante sana. So thank you, Gathoni, thank you, Danish, thank you everybody for attending this. We will upload this on our YouTube channel, Conversations with Esther Katiba. So just follow us there, go subscribe and get a lot of that, get to learn. Next week, we have our part 2 session with the women and mental health. We had part 1 where Jackie shared her story of attempted suicide, and the women said that is not enough. They need more of that. So next week, Wednesday, same time, we will have part 2 of women and mental health. Thank you very much. Enjoy your evening and God bless you. Bye-bye. You're free to leave. Thank you.